ブラウン・ケビンさん、どうもありがとうございました。続きまして、ジャワハル派ネイル大学社会学教授、それからコロンビア大学の准教授でもいらっしゃいますクマール・ビベラさんの方から、社会的排除の認識論という題でご発題をいただきたいと思います。ビベラさん、どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。
Jai Bhim.
Professor Dr. Vivek Kumar, sociologist. Vivek Kumar is an Indian sociologist and a public intellectual. At present, he is professor of sociology at the Center for the Study of Social System, School of Social Sciences, Jawaharlal University, New Delhi. As a recipient of Fulbright Teachers Fellowship, he has taught in the Department of Sociology in Columbia University, New York, USA. He has been a visiting faculty in the Department of Asian and African Studies, Humboldt University, Berlin, Germany. His areas of interest include methodology of social sciences, sociology of marginalized sections, dependent and independent Dalit political leadership, sociology of Indian diaspora, sociology of South Asia, social movements, globalization and social change. Professor Kumar is studying internal differences within the Indian diaspora and its relationship with Indian democracy.
Thank you. Well, at the outset, let me congratulate and thank AIM, BLL and IMDAR for organizing 4th International Ambedkar Convention and also giving me this opportunity to speak in front of this international fora. Before I come to my paper, let me congratulate again and underline at least 3 very important aspects of the international conference like this, which is happening here in Fukuoka. The congratulation is that the organization, particularly at this point, tells us and gives us confidence that at international level, an organization is live, kicking and thinking about the good of the society as a whole across the world. Second, at the international conference also gives us, especially the conference is organized by the excluded, marginalized section, give us hope and confidence that we also have capacity and capability to organize this conference at this international level and organize at par with any other community in the world. And third, I think this also gives us hope that we can also have a collective wisdom. We can come and think together and take the excluded across the world together with ourselves. I think that's why this conference is so very important, and let us all congratulate the organizers. Thank you so much. Friends, I have titled my paper, it is a little bit theoretical in the sense that I have titled it Epistemology of Social Exclusion. And it is an attempt to theorize a social exclusion across the communities which have been deprived and excluded. So it's a little bit more theoretical. I'm trying to bring in, as Professor Brown was talking about, and I thank him for actually laying down the foundation that what we learn from each other. Why social excluded communities should come together and pool their collective wisdom to understand each other's exclusion. And that is why I think this is a simple attempt, a humble attempt to understand the exclusion. And you know, I have used the term epistemology, so don't get bombarded by this term. It's a very simple term which asks these 3 questions. What can be known with certainty and what can be left to opinion? We are not here to make an opinion. We are not here to make a conjecture. We want to have a theoretical, sound, certain background. Second, what is the source and foundation of knowledge? Are we understanding certain communities through poems, or are we having concrete characteristics? We should evolve concrete characteristics to understand social exclusion. Last but not the least, the criteria to distinguish scientific knowledge from other type of non-scientific knowledge. As people say that, oh, God has made all the things, God has made this discrimination, and I think we should look, this discrimination has not been made by God, any supernatural power. It is man-made, and therefore it can be understood by us. So these are three very important aspects. Now, I'm not going into this detail, but as far as social exclusion is concerned, I think we should first define what exactly social exclusion is. Because without, defining, we cannot lay down the contours. We need to understand what it is exactly and how it should be defined. And therefore, we need to look into the context. And as Professor Brown was talking about, that experiences of Afro-American, Burakumin are different, Dalits are different, but I think the discrimination somewhere has similarities, and that's where I think this particular paper tries to look into. Social exclusion is a contested concept, no doubt. It's basically, for me, as it's a process. Social exclusion is process. It is done by certain individuals to others. It is not happening on its own. It's not a natural process as people talk about. It is done by powerful group to the other non-powerful group, and therefore we can definitely look into that it is a process. And we also try to look into that there are types of social exclusion which were individualistic. Individuals get excluded from the community. Individual A, individual B, a man or a woman or a young person can be excluded. We are not talking about the individual exclusion. We are here talking about the collective exclusion. Collective exclusion of Dalits, collective exclusion of Afro-American, and collective exclusion of Burakumin. And therefore, it's a group process. We should look into that this is a group process. It is not an individual's experience. Now, I told you that it is done by certain dominant groups to the other groups, and therefore, social exclusion cannot be changed by individuals' will. Here, we are talking about collective will of the people. It is not the individual, today I stand and therefore I will say that no exclusion. No, it is not going to happen. It is there to be done by this. Now, having given you, we can define it. It's a lit theory. You can take this example from the book that he talks about, that social exclusion basically is a term which only emerged in 1990s. Before, there were other terms which were included and they're defined. I'm not going into that detail, but it's an import of the Western world. And in France, people used it differently, and they talked about, underclass or poor people. They were known as socially excluded. Then there were physically disabled people who were also included. We are not talking about those people. We are talking about able-bodied people who have all collective understanding, who have their thinking power at par with anyone. They can feel, they can organize, they have capacity, they have capability, and yet they are being excluded. Now, coming to this, locating social exclusion is an important aspect, because location in Japanese society, location in American society, and location in Indian society, I think this is a framework, this is a theoretical framework. We can definitely evolve our framework from this type of that how we organize, or we have been organized in Indian society. The nature and scope, intensity and the levels of social exclusion can be identified with these. And what is this, Indian society? If you look into, every society is stratified. It is divided between rich and poor. It is divided in rural and urban. It is divided into different types of classes. But what we are talking about, when we have cultural heterogeneity, when we have religious plurality, and we have also hierarchical caste structure. And you know how many castes are there? According to one commission, that is Mandal Commission, 3,743 castes. It is only known as other backward classes, OBCs, 3,743. And there are 1,231 which are known as scheduled castes. 486 are scheduled tribe. So you can understand the diversity. In this diverse situation, how to really map the social exclusion is a challenge for us. And therefore, I think we need to understand that there are at least seven levels. These are the 7 levels at which social exclusion can be really had. Now, when we talk about structure, the social structure, the type of roles and statuses distributed in society is known as structure. So what are the roles given to Dalits? What were the roles given to blacks? And what are the roles given to Burakumin in Japan? These will define the structure of the society. It is collective. I told that people, whole group is basically exploited, and it is multi-dimensional. That means it is cumulative. Educational, political, social, religious, and spatial. In all these realms, they are excluded. That's why I call them as cumulative. It is dynamic. It keeps on changing. Oh, people say that, oh, Indian society is changing and Dalits have come up. But every time it changes the shape and it changes the size. So is the case with the Afro-American, and so is the case with Burakumin. Earlier, in 2016, a very good law has been passed. But have they been liberated? That is not the case. And therefore, it is dynamic. It has long history. Now, we know Afro-American history, but Indian Dalits history, it's very difficult to ascertain. Some people say it is 4,000 year old. Some people say it is 2,500 years old. Some people say they 500 years old. I'm not going into historicity, but for me, it is important what is the contemporary situation. It has an agency. Social exclusion, as I told you, is not done by, it is not happening in natural phenomena. It is done by some people, and you have to identify. If you can identify the agency, in Indian society, we say Brahmins are the real exploiters, or they have given the social structure. So we have an agency. In Afro-American case, it is the whites which have been considered as agency. I think naming is important. If you name the agency of the exploiter, I think you hit the nail. If you do not name, that means you are hitting the problem under the carpet. So identifying an agency of exploiter is one of the most important aspects. Last but not the least, it is in cultural spheres only. You cannot say, my namaste says everything from where I belong, and my Jai Bhim says something different. So it is also cultural. Exclusion is also cultural. This has to be underlined. Now coming to the representation of, I'm taking this case, the Dalits in India. You can draw a parallel with the Burakumins in Japan and Afro-Americans in US or in different parts of the world. You can draw. So I am trying to argue that there are 46 characteristics to identify. And these are, I am just trying to give you some names because of paucity of time. I can go on discussing, but these are few examples. This is 7. Then we come exclusion of untouchability, that means 8 to 15. If you see, even residential exclusion, denial of acceptance of water. Water becomes dirty. It is unclean if water is being touched by the scheduled caste, or we call as Dalits. So we can say that how they have been defined spaces. This is an important aspect. Exclusion by atrocities. And I have tried to look into these atrocities. It's very, very important to underline whether these types of atrocities are committed in other parts of the world. I think that has to be underlined and recorded if really we do not have. If you have gone through this, then hazardous and stigmatized occupation. I was finding a parallel between Burakumins and the Dalits in India, where actually there's cleaning of human excreta, cleaning of dead animals, midwifery roles, removing of carcasses, grave digging, burning of the deads, drum beating, piggy butchery and toddy tapping, cleaning of soiled clothes. All these are the hazardous occupation. I think we can make a list, we can make a table and give them weightage if you really want to make out the sense of exclusion. Then we have denial. There's political exclusion, denial of participation, religious exclusion. I think there is also a parallel between Burakumins and the Indian, where the cultural interaction is excluded, people are excluded. And then freedom of occupation. Dalits still cannot have the freedom of occupation, and so are the Burakumins in Japan. The village, access to village, all this. Now come to educational exclusion, and we have seen the biggest epitome now is Rohit Vemula. How Rohit Vemula, a PhD scholar of the Dalit community, was denied the access to his own university system. Now there can be number of examples, and you can look into that how discrimination happens on the university. Now enemy among the Afro-American, enemy is of different color, but in the case of Burakumin and Dalits, the skin color is same. Sometimes even the physical features are same, and therefore exclusion, to determine exclusion becomes even more difficult. And therefore we look into also same religion. Sometimes we have same religion and yet exploitation takes place. So therefore it becomes so very difficult to understand social exclusion. But even then, with this difficulty, we can make indicators, we can highlight the indicators and give them some numerical numbers so to count which type of exclusion happens in which type of community. A theoretical model can be evolved. Now, we look into this epistemic basis of identity of Dalits, and I have tried to specify 7 characteristics on the basis of which a collectivity can be identified. And I talked about structural location, multiplicity of exclusion, long history, collective communitarian basis of exclusion, unalterable identity. That is a very important criteria, because even if Dalits, Afro-American or Burakumin gain economic, political, educational and geographical mobility, their identity is kept intact and their identity is invoked. As far as marriage is concerned, definitely for Dalits as well as Burakumin, their both identities can be looked into before they enter into marriage relations. So therefore it is unalterable, even though economic, political, educational. So people keep on telling, oh, let's give them education and they will be emancipated. It's not going to happen that even for education, the most powerful person, Indian president, the first Dalit president of India, what was written in the press? The first Dalit president of India, or the first Dalit judge, Chief Justice of India. This Dalit identity is never evoked, even though they achieve political, educational or economic development. Last but not the least, this all exclusion, it is not, I'm saying that it is not all gone, foregone situation, or they have lost the battle. It is not the case. Out of this discrimination and exclusion, Dalits have tried to maneuver. They have tried to create a cultural capital of their own, and this is construction of consciousness, which cuts across their linguistic boundaries, their religious boundaries, and their regional boundaries. And people sitting here from Uttar Pradesh, from Tamil Nadu, from Maharashtra, from Punjab, and many other part of the country speak the volume that how they have cut across, and they're meeting in Japan. Last but not the least, they have evolved their independent icons. One of them are here, and they have evolved their greeting symbols, Jai Bhim, and also their celebrations. So in this way, they have tried to evolve a collective identity of their own. And they have also launched different types of movements. That is an important aspect. They have not let the things lying down. Rather, they have asserted. And these are 7 types of movements, or 8 types of movement. I have added recently the media and the social media movement led by the youths also into it. You know that how Dalit literary movement became so important that it produced after biographies after autobiographies after autobiographies. And these autobiographies challenged the existing literature of the English people, English literature, Hindi literature, whatever literature existed in India, Indian literature was challenged by the autobiographies of the Dalit community people. I think, therefore, autobiographies become a very, very important and potent, power to challenge the existing knowledge system. And they have really challenged the knowledge system, and they have distorted all established system. The employees movement, you can unite, you can definitely develop. Dalit diaspora is an important, important category which has to be analyzed. And I call it Dalit diaspora because these are the Dalits who have really spread all over the world, and they have united to launch a particular type of movement where you see Baba Saheb Ambedkar's bust have entered into 9 universities. All over the world, 9 universities have Baba Saheb's bust, and more definitely are going to follow. Now, it's not only that Baba Saheb bust have entered, Baba Saheb's knowledge system has been, there, and the way the world has been started recognizing his contribution to the human rights, champion the cause of the human rights, he has become a global icon. He is no more local. Baba Saheb is no more local, but he has become a global icon. It is because it is the contribution of the Dalit diaspora who went to the different parts of the world and established Baba Saheb Ambedkar in different parts of the world. They celebrate Baba Saheb Ambedkar's birth anniversary, death anniversary. They organize conferences like this, and therefore Baba Saheb Ambedkar has been brought to different types of the places. And now, if you take this, the emancipatory ideology of Baba Saheb, and somebody has rightly put out, the parliament is behind this. Now, Baba Saheb gave 3 very important suggestions. One was, of course, the Constitution of India. The second was the Buddhism. So he gave both. Now Parliament is here to judge where to go. It's up to you. You can be political and you can be religious. You can be political and religious, both. And therefore, there is an emancipatory agenda also within this particular type of exclusion, which of course is being fought by the Dalits in India. Thank you so much.